see on our right hand side, just about to sail right past us, is the only true island here on Coniston Water. This is called Peel Island. Now, if you're a Swallows and Amsons fan, you won't actually know it as Peel Island. You'll know it a lot better as Wildcat Island, as that was the name that was given to it by Arthur Ransom when he was making up his story for his rather famous Swallows and Amsons story. Now, the island itself is not actually based off one true island, but actually appears to be a combination of several islands throughout the Lake District. As you can see, Peel Island, though, is actually the home of the secret harbour. You can see all of those outward-bound school kids currently sat on the beach in the harbour there. So the way to actually get into that harbour that was depicted in the story of having leading lights and jam jars and all the rest of it, that's actually true, because there's quite a few dangerous rocks to get into that harbour, so I wouldn't recommend taking gondola in there. We might get sacked for doing that, but I can certainly recommend doing it in a canoe, and it's quite an easy trip to do. The campsite and the rocky edges that were also written about in the story, they also came from this island as well. Arthur Ransom had written in his autobiography that he had taken some inspiring features from Blakeholme and Ramphome, which are two small islands on Lake Windermere. Now, Arthur Ransom was actually quite heavily influenced to write his famous children's story during his younger years, when the Ransom family were often coming to the English Lake District on their family holidays from about the years of 1884 until about 1897. They would often stay in the small hamlet of Nithwaite, located at the southern end of Coniston Water, and a small tradition of theirs that they always used to have was that they used to row out more towards the end of their holiday out to Peel Island, row their little rowing dinghy into the secret harbour and enjoy a picnic on the island. Arthur Ransom and his brothers and sisters were very frequently seen fishing for minnows and perches along that water's edge, and Arthur Ransom's father, being a very keen angler, often used to take their rowing dinghy, probably wanting a little bit of peace and quiet by the end of the holiday by that point, and decided to go on a small fishing excursion out into the middle of Coniston Water. The lighthouse tree in the story did actually used to exist on the island, but in the storm of 1963-64, the same storm that broke Gondola free of her moorings, also managed to fell down the lighthouse tree on the island. The Arthur Ransom Society in the early 2000s planted a replacement lighthouse tree, which is a small sapling located on the northern part of the island. So we'll come back in about 40-50 years' time, then we will have another lighthouse tree here on Peel Island. If you've ever seen the 1970s film version of The Swallows and the Amsons, where they actually filmed that as the lighthouse tree, it's actually Friar's Crag on Derwentwater near Keswick. They also ended up using the motor launch Annie Meller for the houseboat in that story. The producers of the 1970s film version actually wanted to use gondola, but by that point in history she was basically a sunken wreck on Coniston Water, so instead they had to borrow one of Keswick launches and use that as the houseboat in the story. Those of you that have read The Swallows and Amsons, you will know that in that story there is actually a part where or a chapter where the children couldn't actually go on one of their many sailing excursions. This was because all down to the lack of wind, and they ended up being trapped on the island. Instead, they actually decided to row their sailing dinghy Swallow to the nearest shoreline. Well, that would be this shoreline off to our right-hand side, as you can see from the proximity of the island to the beach. This would actually be where the children would row to, and this is the exact same point that Arthur Ransom had envisioned in his story. Now, when they landed here, they'd go off for a walk in these woods, and it would be these woods of Parker Moor where the children would actually go off and meet the charcoal burners in the story. Now, some of the earliest industries that were occurring lines here of Coniston Water was bark peeling. This would often be used in the tanning industry to turn hides into leather, and also charcoal burning will also later go on to be used for smelting, and then later on for gunpowder production. So back at that point in history, instead of this nice tranquil, serene forest that you can now see, there would have been a sort of light bluey sort of haze of smoke that would have been emitting from the tree line there. Now, smelting and also charcoal burning also went on to be used for gunpowder production. In fact, the English Lake District actually ended up making some of the finest grades of gunpowder in history. In fact, some of the bits of gunpowder that were produced here in Cumbria in the Lake District, This also went off to serve the military in some of the world's most famous battles, including the Battle of Waterloo and also the Battle of Trafalgar.